for that as well, or maybe you can call it as a flow chart, right? Can you try to answer this, guys? Just quickly. I know too easy for someone, but we are just touching upon the basics so that whenever you write, whenever anyone from your class writing the code shouldn't feel any difficulty. Smaller than 15, is it? Okay. Good. Good. Correct. So the answer is smaller than 15. The reason behind that is int I is equal to 10 we have defined, and if I is lesser than 15, then it's going to print out the very first statement which is written right after the if statement. Right. So the statement, if I see the right after the if statement, is going to be the I is smaller than 15, which is basically this one. And the else part will not get executed since the value of an I is equal to 10. If it would have been 25, then the else part would have got executed. Okay, we may have a nested if. Nested if basically indicates if a condition is true, right? Rather than going for a nested if, sometimes we can have an AND operation as well, right? So we can write a condition. It's like maybe just to avoid this, the nested if, you can write the condition 1 and then condition 2. It is same as writing a nested if. There is none difference. If you're just writing a nested if, that means basically whenever the first condition gets successful, then you need to check for the condition 2. If the condition 2 is also successful, then you need to print something, or maybe just do some operation. But that's the same as writing a 2 if statement. So even if you write if condition 1 and then inside the bracket, if you want to write a condition 2, okay, and then after that you can write something else. Is that clear? So let's move on to the next. Okay, switch case is we use various times when we do even competitive coding. We might need to use the switch case. So how exactly a switch case works is the switch case is a multi-way branch statement. It provides an easy way to display evaluation to the different parts of the code based on the values of expression. So let's say I have given you an expression, and on the basis of this expression, I need to evaluate my expression. I need to evaluate my expression first, and then I execute a particular block of the code. Okay. So let's say I have 10 or 15 cases. So you can write it as in if, else if, else if, else if, else if, else if. But there would be so many conditions if and else if. So rather than writing a redundant code, what you can do is you can make use of a switch statement. So whenever and the advantage over there is the switch statement. Whenever you got the value is right, it won't check for the below one. That's the same case. We do have an else if as well. Right? If statement, then else if, then else if. So if we found an else if, it won't check for the remaining code. Right? So let's say the expression 1, it will check the value is matching 1. The value 1 is matching with an expression. If it is, it will print the statement 1, or it will execute whatever is written inside the case 1. And after that, it will just break the loop. So that means the code will not go on further. If we don't get any of the things, right? So the expression shouldn't match with the value 2, expression shouldn't match with the value 1, then it will go to the default case. Right. So once it goes to the default case, it will print whatever it wants, whatever we have written inside the default statement. Okay. So basically, Java supports the 3 jump statements. So 3 jump statements are the break, continue, and the return. Right. So what does the break do? Break will basically exit from a for loop or a while loop or whatever the kind of a loop you have. Right. So terminate a sequence in which a switch statement is executed. Right. So if we write a break over here, it will not execute it further. It will just break it. Right. to exit a loop. used as a civilized form of a goto. So in the goto, we specify, okay, this is a place where you have to go. Okay? But in the break, we don't have to define any such thing. It will directly break the loop and it will again, the execution will again go to the for loop itself. So using break to exit a loop, using break we can force immediate termination of a loop by passing the condition expression and any remaining code in the body of the loop to not break when used inside a set of a nested loop will only break out of the innermost loop. Okay. Let's say I have a two for loop, or maybe we can use some online compiler. Let's say I have this loop and the I have defined is int I is equals to 20, or maybe n is equals to 20 since I have already. And let's say I do have an inner loop and j is equals to 0, j should be lesser than n plus j. And let's say I'm increasing my count variable by 1 each and every time. Okay. And over here, I have defined a variable of count is equals to 0. And here, right after this, I do have a break statement. Can anyone guess what could be the answer for this one? If I let me just write a print statement as well. Can anyone tell me what should be the answer for this one? Or maybe we can reduce to n is equal to 5, just for the easy calculation. Anyone, guys? So it's basically we do have a for loop. Inside that we have another for loop, and we are incrementing the value of a count in the inner for loop, not in the outer one. Okay, 21. Okay, we have changed the value for n is equals to 5. Just to give you an idea. Right? Yeah, would it be 5? Yeah, let's see. How about others, guys? Let's try to run it and see what exactly the output we are getting, and then we will discuss that. Okay. So the output we are getting, it is only 5, right? The reason behind that is because we do have a break statement over here. So ideally, it should break the inner for loop only. It's not going to break the outer for loop, right? So how many times we are going to iterate? N is equals to 5. It will start from the n is equals to 0. Okay, n is equals to 0. It's all good now. Okay, it will start from j is equals to 0 to j should be lesser than n. So if I just talk about the outer for loop, how many times it will going to get executed? Only 5 number of times, because it will get executed for 0, for 1, for 2, for 3, for 5, sorry, for 4. Right? Because I should be lesser than n. So I cannot be equals to the 5 at all. So how many times it will going to get executed? Only 4, 5 number of times. Right? And this loop, as we increase the value by 1, this loop is going to call a break statement. Whenever it calls a break statement, that means the inner loop is going to get executed only once. So once like I is equal to 0, I should be lesser than 5. Ideally, it should execute it for the 5 number of times. If you wouldn't have a break statement, it would get executed 5 number of times. But since it already has a break statement, it's not going to get executed. Correct, correct. 15, 16, 18, all are executed for the 5 times. Good. So count is equal to the count plus 1 will only get executed only for the 5 number of times, because we do have a break statement. Right? So once the break statement gets called, it will just come out of this loop. Right? The execution will go to the again I. It will check for the I is equals to 1. It will again do the same. But again, we do have a break statement and it will remain the same. Any doubts, guys? Okay. If not, maybe we can move on to the next one. Guys, anyone has doubts? Feel free to ask. Right? Then we do have a continuous statement. So when do we use a continuous statement? Let's say, okay, so the continuous statement sometimes is useful to force an early iteration of a loop. That is, you might want to continue running a loop, but stop processing the remainder of the code, right? In its body of for its particular iteration. This is an effect on go to pass past the body of the loop to the loop side. The continuous statement performs such an act. Might be a confusing language, but let's have a look at the example. The example is quite straightforward. We do have a for loop. Right? For int I is equals to 0, I should be lesser than 10. I plus plus. If I modulo 2 is equals to 0. Right? What exactly this indicates? That if my number is an even number, I'm going to continue inside the loop. Good, good. And if it's an odd number, I'm going to print out this statement. Okay, I already started getting the answer. That's good, guys. How about others? Guys, please take care of the spaces as well while giving the answer, because at this time I can understand that okay, there should be space, but right, but sometimes they ask the MCQ in such a manner, right? They won't give a space in between one option, they give the space. So whenever giving the answer, try to give as much as accurate you can. Okay? I know you already saw that, but try to give the answers in that form only, so that later you won't make many mistakes. Okay, good, good. Okay, so the answer for this one would be 13579, right? And with the spaces in between them. Why we are getting the spaces? Okay, let's iterate it first for those who didn't get it. How exactly we are getting? So basically, it will get executed for the I is equals to 0. 0 modulo 2 is equals to 0. It will continue inside the loop. Right? So it won't going to print over here. It will go here. The statement, the execution will again go to the I. So we'll check for the I is equal to 1. I is equal to, that's the condition is not going to be happening. So we'll print out the value 1 along with the space. So till here I got 1 and a space. Now it will execute for the 2. It's again going to inside this if statement, this boolean value is true. If this is true, I'm going to again give a continue. I will check for the I is equals to 3 now. If I check for the I is equals to 3, I will be getting 3 with 1 space in that. So similarly, for the 9, you will be getting in Similarly, for the each and every odd number, you will be keep on getting the same answer. So that would be going to your final answer. Okay. Okay, what does a return statement does? A return statement is used to explicitly return something from a method that is caused that is it causes a program control to transfer back to the caller method. So even if you have seen, right, let me just give you a nice example of where we do use a return statement. So we do have a class return, right? This is just kind of a main class that we use, right? Boolean t is equals to true system.out.println before the return. If t returns, okay, this won't get executed. So what should be the answer for this one? So once you have a return statement, the remaining block of a code will not get executed, and you will always come out of the okay, good before the return. Okay, okay, good. Correct. So the answer would be Boolean t is equals to true. We have defined the value t as true. Now system.out.println before the return. So when I say before the return, it will always get executed because there is no return statement before it, and we don't have any continue or the break statement as well, right? So if t, then it's going to return. So t is basically true. That means this condition is valid and it is going to return. Right? Once it returns, the remaining code will not get executed. Even if I have several print statements, any of the print statement will not get executed because we returned the value before. Right? So the answer would be before the return. Yeah. Okay. Now can you guys tell me what are the ways of reading an input in the Java? Right? Or any of the method are you guys aware of? And how do we okay, scanner, okay, good, correct. But do we have any other method apart from scanner? Okay, using a buffer class, good, correct. Okay, creating an object. Okay, then how you are going to read an an input from by creating an object from the console, right? It's altogether a different kind of a scenario because we want to read the input from the user point of view, right? Creating an object can read it if you have already defined it somewhere. Okay, so let's get started. We do have four different methods for reading an input. In the Java, there are the four different methods for reading an input from the user in the command line environment, which is basically we called it as a console. So the very first I see it as using the buffer data class. So most of you guys have already answered it. That's good. So since this is a Java classical method to take the input introduced in the JDK one, this method is used by wrapping the system.in. Right? This basically also internally uses the system.in, which is a system standard input stream in an input stream reader, which is wrapped in a buffer reader, and we can read the input from the user in the command. The input is the buffer for the efficient reading, and the wrapping code is hard to remember. Right? To use integer.parseInt, and after that you need to pass it as a string so that it's gonna pass. If you want to take it as a double, you need to again pass it. If you want to take the multiple values, you need to use the split function. I will give you an exercise to give it a try for these questions. Right? How exactly we are going to take an input if we have to take it as an integer. If not, I can explain you in the next class. Right? If somebody is facing an issue on taking an input using a buffer reader and with the data type as an integer, then how exactly we should do it. Okay. The second method, which is a very common method, I guess most of you guys already aware of, which is basically use of a scanner class. Right? So this is probably the most preferred method to take the input. The main purpose of a scanner class is to parse the primitive type, and string uses a regular expression. However, it can also be to read the input from the user in the command line. The convenient method for parsing the primitives, nextInt, nextfloat, and so on and so forth from the tokenized input. Regular expression can be used to find the tokens. The reading methods are not synchronized. So if you have a look at this, so first we need to define it as like scanner in is equals to the new scanner system dot in. Okay, string s is equals to the in dot next line. This will basically take the input from the user. After that, whatever we want to print, appended with s. So your entered string would be s. If I want to take an integer, it will take it as a next string, next float. So float will be taken it as a next float, next string, and make sure the very first of the very first character right after next, it's going to be in the capital caps lock. These are the things when you write code. These are the things you need to keep memorize these things. Otherwise, you will keep getting errors over this time, and it will be hard to. So let's move on. Okay, the third way I see it as using a console class. The control class, it has been becoming a preferred for reading the user's input from the command line. In addition, it can be used for reading the password like without echoing the character entered by the user. The string format syntax can be used like system.out.println. Right. This is not we use it. This is not regularly used thing, but yeah, sometimes we can use it for maybe which are the keys which we need to encrypt or some kind of one. So basically what it does is it doesn't echo this, right? When I say echo, that means it doesn't reflect on to the compiler itself. Right? So reading the password without echoing the entered character, reading the methods are synchronized, format string syntax can be used, does not work in a non-interactive environment. Right? So it might not work in your IDE, but yeah, this is one of the method which we rarely use. So string name is equal to system.console.readline. And if you want to print out something, so you need to give the input over here, and whatever the input you are gonna give, it will just get appended to the string. The fourth statement using a command line argument. I assume you guys must have done it in the C. The same thing we can do it in the Java as well. If you guys carefully see, we do pass in string arg, right? So what does that arg in this case? It might have some meaning, and that's what basically the console output, right? Using a command line. So most used user input for the competitive coding, the command line argument are stored in the string format. The pass into method of an integer class converts an string argument into an integer. The pass int is basically used for converting a string to an integer. Similarly, for the float and the other during the execution, the user of an arg comes into the existence in this form. The passing information takes place during the program. The command line is given to the arg. These programs have to be run on the command. When I say CMD is anyone can find on any of the laptop. You can find always CMD. There should be a command prompt kind of like this. And you can always open it and start executing your code. So how exactly it works is it basically checks whether what is an argument length. Okay. Okay, you cannot directly write it over here. So you need to give a Java C, right? GFG1, that is the name of the file that you have saved it, .java. If required, you need to give a path as well for that. Right? Then after that, whatever the input you want to take. So the Java main, I want to take it as an hello world. So hello is a one input, world is another input I want to take off. Right? So these are the basically two arguments that I have given. And main is the main class that we are going to get executed. Right? So if the args.length is greater than 0, then it's going to print a command line arguments are, which is basically this, the command line arguments are. Okay, for string values to the args, that means it's going to iterate for the each and every args value. System.out.println well. What is the well indicates? That means if I'm going to iterate for each and every value inside the args, it's going to print the hello first, then world second. So it's going to print the hello. It's going to print the hello and the world. If the length wouldn't have been greater than 0, it would have directly comes to the else part, which is system.out.println no command line arguments form. Okay, let's try out one question I have. Give me a minute. Any doubts, guys, so far, whatever we have discussed? How exactly we should proceed for this? I know, not too difficult question, quite straightforward. Guys, anyone? Or you didn't get the question itself? You guys got the question? Guys, any solution would be okay for this, right? Can you guys suggest me something? How should we exactly proceed for it? Maybe initial start. Okay, let's forget about the finding the palindrome, whether it's a palindrome or not. Okay, and modulo 10 should be used and assign it to a variable and add them and check for the palindrome. Okay, good. Correct. It's an easy question. That's all you have to do, right? So now the question is, maybe we can discuss in the detail inside the next, maybe in the next class. But just to give an overview for this, right? You guys need to tell me. I will share the doc with you guys. Okay, the doc has a link for this question. So maybe you guys can try it on the compiler itself, because what happens when you try it on the online compiler? No, there is not any such condition. if you see, we do have a 7 as well, right? So there is no as such condition. The digits can be anything. Even it can be 0 as well. If you have a look at the constraint, right? The constraint n can lie between 1 to the 10 to the power 9. Right? So n can be any one of all of these. And if you have a look at the company tax, it was once being asked in the Snapdeal. So just I'm giving you a brief of this question. I will let you guys to give it a try on this compiler itself, right? The reason why I'm saying that you need to try it out on the GFG compiler or maybe any other coding platform compiler, because sometimes you get your code executed, you pass all the test cases, whatever you did, but sometimes your code will not able to pass uh, the test case which are on the higher side. When I say it's on the higher side, that takes a lot of more time complexity to get executed. So these are the compilers which automatically checks whether your code is exceeding the time complexity which should be there for a code to get executed. Right? So that's the reason why I'm suggesting you to try it out on this compiler. Right? I will tell you the method right away. So the very first method I can see it as what the one guy suggested. We can take an n modulo 10. Right? So if we take n modulo 10, I'm gonna get all the digits. Right? And keep adding all the digits. Right? Keep adding all the digits. Once you add all the digits, now you need to check for the palindrome. Right? How are you gonna check it for the palindrome? So for checking a palindrome, you need to somehow reverse the number. Right? For checking a palindrome, guys, I'm just writing a pseudo code. If you want an actual code, we can discuss in the next class as well. But what I want you guys to give it a try first. Right? Wherever you get stuck, try to help, try to get the help from the Google just for the syntax. Not don't look for the solution. I know it's a very easy problem. You guys can do it. Right? How you should check for the palindrome? Reverse the number. Once you reverse the number and check the original number, right? Reverse the number, compare reverse number, compare reverse number and original number. Right? If they are the same, then you can claim. If they are same, you can claim that it's going to be a palindrome. Yes or no. One more thing to notice over here is the return type of the function is basically an integer. So you need to either return 1 or you need to either return 1, that means true, or you need to either return 0, that means false. Right? There are the other methods to do it as well. The second method, we'll discuss all these methods inside the next class, but I'm just giving you a brief. Right? You can convert it into a string. Right? First convert it into a string. After converting it into a string, calculate sum. I will leave up to you guys how exactly you are going to calculate the sum of a string. Right? Each and every character using iterating, like you need to iterate each and every characters inside that string and calculate the sum. And reverse the string now. Whatever the sum you got, reverse it. So sum, reverse the sum. Or better way to make it, reverse sum. Okay. Then again convert it into a string. And after converting a string, you need to check whether the sum and whatever the conversion of a string you did is same or not. Right? Something is it same or not? If same, you need to do the if same, yes or no, you need to print it out. Okay. The third method, I see it as doing it as using stack. method number 3, you can make use of stack. Okay? For finding a palindrome, you can use stack as well. Again, I'm sure most of you guys have read the stack, okay? Because I see the stack, linked list, and the queue stack and the linked list has been covered. So you guys can make use of it. Give it a try, guys, at least. Okay. So far I can only think of these 3 methods. If you guys have any other solution, maybe you guys can try with that as well. We can discuss more into the details in the next class. Any doubt, guys, in this? Apart from that, I will make sure the document is shared with you. So guys, you guys will be having a link for this question. Go to this question, try it out yourself. And if you guys find any difficulty, maybe you guys can ask me in the next class. We can have a complete solution for this. Right. Okay, guys. Maybe you guys can drop off. Okay, thank you.